For most of his life, Arthur Morgan believed one simple lie, that a man could outrun who he really was. Every robbery, every gunfight, every life he took was justified by the same words Dutch kept repeating. We're survivors, we're family. But survival isn't the same as living, and family isn't always built on love. Arthur never asked if he was a good man, because he already believed he wasn't. That's the tragedy. The strongest man in the Linde gang wasn't fighting the law. He was fighting the version of himself he thought was impossible to change. Psychologists call this identity foreclosure, where someone accepts an identity given to them instead of choosing one for themselves. Arthur wasn't born an outlaw, he became one, because Dutch gave him purpose before he was old enough to question it. He learned to shoot before he learned to dream. He learned loyalty before he learned freedom. Every decision he made felt like his own, but deep inside, he was living someone else's life. That's why Arthur never smiled for long, because somewhere inside him there was always a quiet voice asking, is this really who I am, or just who I was told to be? Then came the moment that shattered everything. Not a bullet, not betrayal, but a diagnosis. Tuberculosis didn't just attack Arthur's body. We all live as if tomorrow belongs to us, until one day we're reminded that it never did. Psychology calls this mortality salience. When people truly face death, their priorities change. Suddenly money means nothing. Power means nothing. Reputation means nothing. What matters is the answer to one terrifying question. When I'm gone, what will people remember about me? Arthur didn't become kinder because he was weak. He became kinder because death stripped away every excuse he'd ever hidden behind. He started helping strangers, protecting families, freeing people he once would have ignored. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't trying to survive. He was trying to deserve peace. That's what makes his journey unforgettable. He didn't find redemption because someone forgave him. He found redemption because he finally stopped lying to himself. The hardest prison Arthur ever lived in wasn't a jail cell. It was guilt. Every face he couldn't save. Every innocent life destroyed by the gang. Every promise he broke became invisible scars that followed him everywhere. This is known as moral injury, the psychological wound that appears when someone betrays their own values. Unlike trauma, moral injury doesn't come from what happened to you. It comes from what you did or allowed to happen. Arthur carried that weight in silence because he believed suffering was the price he deserved to pay. Notice how rarely he complains about his illness. The pain in his lungs never hurt as much as the pain in his memories. That's why his conversations become softer as the story goes on. His anger fades because anger requires believing you're right. Arthur stopped believing that long before the world noticed. He wasn't searching for forgiveness anymore. He was searching for one final chance to leave the world slightly better than he found it, even if nobody ever knew his name. Maybe that's why Arthur Morgan still feels real years after the credits roll. His story reminds us that people are not trapped by their worst mistakes, unless they choose to be. Redemption isn't about erasing the past, because that's impossible. It's about deciding that your final chapter deserves to be better than the ones before it. Arthur couldn't change the man he had been, but he could choose the man he wanted to become before the end. And maybe that's the most painful lesson of all. Sometimes it takes knowing you're going to die before you finally learn how to live. In the end, Arthur stopped believing in gangs, stopped believing in outlaws, and even stopped believing in Dutch. But if there was one person he trusted, like a real brother, until his very last breath, it was John Marston.